What's up, BookTube? Sandy back here with another video, and I wanted to talk about Fantastic Land by Mike Bachoven because I actually have finished this book, and I gotta tell you, I really liked it. And I normally, when I'm reading books, or just before I get ready to read a book, I tread carefully reading the comments that people have about books, whether it's on Amazon or whether it's on Goodreads or somewhere else. I try to be really careful because sometimes people purposely and inadvertently put spoilers out there that can actually destroy a book. In this case, I don't think spoilers with this particular book would be that much of a big deal. But the one thing that it could spoil is if sometimes you read a book that's your taste but not someone else's taste, and then the people who it's not their taste, they trash the book, and then all of a sudden you start seeing a lot of 2, 3, 1-star ratings, and then all of a sudden you're like, you know what, maybe I'm not quite as excited about reading that book as I thought I was going to be. And so I try to avoid it for that, even though generally speaking I don't really let those kinds of comments or ratings influence me too much, especially if I'm really determined that I want to read a book, which I was with Fantastic Land. So, first of all, the way I read this book, Fantastic Land, I read it, used two different formats. One, I read obviously the physical copy of the book, which I found on Amazon. And then, I decided to get the audio version of the book as well, and so I did a little bit of both. And it was really fun to get the audio version of the book, because the thing about Fantastic Land that makes it unique is that what Fantastic Land is, it's set up as a series of interviews that take place to tell the story of what happens in the book. So because it was in interview format, you get to hear the voices, and it's kind of interesting because the voices actually, in this book, the audio book is actually really beneficial and actually brought the book even more to life than the actual reading part. I mean, I did do a lot of reading, but sometimes during the day when I'm busy, I can put on headphones and I can listen to the audio version of the book, and I actually sped it up to twice the speed, so 2.0. And at one point I even went faster than that, because I was able to absorb it and I was able to hear it, and it made it even more intriguing. Now, the interviews in the book consist of course, of people who were involved in what happened when the hurricane hit Fantastic Land. So the characters themselves aren't necessarily as important as what's happening, and so there were times when I kind of lost track of what the different characters were saying, especially when you're listening to the audiobook, but you still got a really good feel for what was going on at the Fantastic Land entertainment amusement park. And so you really get a feel for the magnitude of this park. Is that it's just this gigantic Disneyland type park, this huge park, and it's almost like it's like a city, how big it is, the way that it's described in the book. And so you really get a feel for that, and I think that really came through in the audiobook, and I think the emotions of people came through in the audiobook. So I really recommend you consider reading the audiobook with Fantastic Land, or listening to the audiobook, as it were. But either way, it's really good. I enjoyed it. I will say one thing about this book, in that it's not for everybody. That's for sure. It's very graphic in some areas. It's uncomfortable in some areas, and it'll definitely push your comfort level in terms of what you can tolerate as far as violence and the effects of violence. And so just be prepared for that. But if you like Lord of the Flies, you probably will like this book, because it definitely gives you, from what I understand of Lord of the Flies, I've not read Lord of the Flies, but from what I understand, this book is very similar. And actually the author even says that if meticulously curated online personas can replace private identities, What takes over when those constructs are lost? Fantastic Land is a modern take on Lord of the Flies meets Battle Royale that probes the consequences of a society built online. So that part about the online is really interesting, and I started to pick up on that even more as you think of how things transpired and why things transpired the way they did, and the role of online social media, such and such, the role that played into it. So that's as far as I'll go with it, because I don't want to spoil it too much for those of you who are interested in reading it. But definitely one that I was going to actually read in September. But then I started thinking more about October, and this would be maybe more appropriate for me to read in the month of October, and it certainly was. Definitely glad I read it. It is spooky, at times uncomfortable, and at times scary, but very realistic. And I think the method of telling the story through a series of interviews, to me, brought it to life even more. So I really was appreciative of that format of writing. I definitely enjoyed it, probably much more than if it would have been just a kind of your classic third-person narrative. So well done by Mike Bachoven. I'll definitely be keeping my eyes open for future books, or even past books by Mike Bachoven, to see if there's anything else that is appealing, because this certainly was Fantastic Land by Mike Bachoven. It might be worth checking out if you got an open slot here in the month of October and you're looking for something that maybe has that Octoberish kind of vibe. You might want to think about picking up Fantastic Land.